Are you a mirror? Mirrors don't blink. Your eyes, they look like mine. Your face looks like mine. I'm Kofi. You're not supposed to be here. Why?
Tonight, the man who controlled everything was staring at a boy who shouldn't exist. 3 floors below, Ada had broken her golden rule, never return to Seoul. For 6 years, 4 months, and 11 days, she kept her son hidden in London. But a last-minute itinerary change trapped her in the one place she dreaded, Jin-Ho's hotel, and she was exactly 90 seconds away from her past catching up to her. Across the glass, 2 6-year-olds look into a mirror that isn't supposed to blink back. Genetics are never this specific. Jin-Ho's jaw tightens as the cold calculation sets in. His voice drops to a lethal whisper. Find out who brought that boy. Tonight, the room belonged to him, not because his name was on the deed, or because his security team blocked every exit. It belonged to Kang Jin-Ho because every politician, judge, and billionaire in the room understood one rule. Their safety tonight depended entirely on his mood. Jin-Ho stood by the far window, his custom navy suit absorbing the cold ballroom light. He held a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched in 40 minutes. He didn't rule through force. He ruled through patience, watching people until he knew exactly what they wanted and exactly what they feared. 15 across the marble floor, his 6-year-old daughter, Seo, ran toward him, her hanbok fanning out behind her. She was entirely fearless. As Jin-Ho caught her, his head of intelligence, Park Sung-yi, stepped into his blind spot. His voice was a flat whisper. Sir, an unexpected guest just scanned into the east wing. Jin-Ho didn't look away from his daughter. Name? Sung-yi hesitated for half a second. We're still confirming. Jin-Ho's eyes went razor-sharp. Then confirm faster. 3 floors below, the air left Ada's body. The taxi had stopped directly under the golden canopy of the Kang Grand Hotel. His hotel, her mind spun backward. She had spent 6 years, 4 months, and 11 days rejecting promotions and dodging conferences to keep her son hidden in London. Then Daniel sent a career-defining brief, and she missed the venue detail until it was too late. Mummy, Kofi stirred against her shoulder, looking out at the flashing paparazzi lights. Is it a storybook place? Ada looked at the uniformed security guards checking vehicle trunks. It wasn't a storybook, it was a fortress. Stay close to me, Ada whispered, opening the door. Do not wander. Kofi was bored. His mum was locked in her smooth, careful work voice with a man in a grey suit, which meant she would be talking forever. He drifted away, his eyes catching the massive gold-framed glass doors at the edge of the reception hall. Through the glass lay the main ballroom, lit by a chandelier that looked like a frozen waterfall. Then he stopped. Standing on the exact opposite side of the glass was a girl. She wore a cream-colored dress, her hair pinned back neatly. Kofi blinked. The girl blinked. He tilted his head. She tilted hers. It was like looking into a mirror, but the mirror was breathing back with pure shock. She looked exactly like him. Slowly, Kofi raised his hand and waved. The girl didn't wave back. She just stared at him like he was a ghost. Jin-Ho noticed the silence first. Seo was usually the loudest child in any room, but suddenly she had gone completely still. He followed her path. She was standing at the east glass doors, her small hands pressed flat against the pane. Jin-Ho walked over smoothly, keeping his pace unhurried. Urgency signaled weakness to the room. He reached his daughter and looked through the glass. On the other side stood a small boy in a child's tuxedo. Black hair, dark skin, 6 years old. The boy was looking at Seo with open, confused curiosity. Jin-Ho froze. The ice in his chest shattered. Genetics are never this specific. The jawline, the structure of the eyes, it was like looking at a fractured piece of his own life. On the other side of the glass, the boy waved. Jin-Ho took one slow step back, his face turning to stone as he caught Sung-yi's eye across the floor. Sung-yi, Jin-Ho commanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. That boy at the east door. Find out who brought him into my building. Now. Gala continued 40 floors below, but inside Jin-Ho's private office, the only sound was the faint hum of vehicle horns from the city far beneath. He hadn't touched his fresh drink. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass, watching the lights of Seoul blink indifferent and cold. He had built an empire on predictable variables. He did not tolerate anomalies. The door clicked. Park Sung-yi entered, sliding a single printed folder onto the dark mahogany desk. The full profile, sir, Sung-yi said, his voice low. Ada Okafor, age 33, British national, London address, cultural investment consultant. Jin-Ho didn't turn around. He did the math in his head, the exact calculation he had been resisting since the moment he saw the boy's face. 7 years ago, she left Seoul without an explanation. The boy outside the glass door was 6 years old. She left a trace, Jin-Ho murmured. No, sir, Sung-yi corrected quietly. The London records are completely clean. No father listed on the birth certificate, no legal claims. She wasn't hiding from the law, she was hiding from you. Jin-Ho turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the printed photo of Ada on his desk. The room grew suffocatingly quiet. Where are they sleeping tonight? Floor 24, Sung-yi replied. Suite 2408, under her firm's itinerary. Jin-Ho picked up his glass, the ice clinking like steel, locked down the floor. No one exits without my signature. Suite 2408, the lights were entirely off. Ada sat on the edge of the mattress, her fingers trembling slightly as she tapped her phone screen. On the adjacent bed, Kofi was fast asleep, one arm thrown carelessly over his forehead, completely safe in his innocence. She opened the airline app. Seoul to London Heathrow. 6:15 a.m. departure. She clicked confirm booking. The screen spun. A red error banner flashed across the top. Reservation cancelled by provider. Ada's breath caught. She refreshed the page. The app locked her out completely. Before she could panic, the suite's digital wall panel illuminated, humming softly as a notification pinged. Complimentary upgrade protocol initiated. Guest Ada Okafor has been relocated to the Imperial Penthouse by order of executive management. The automated lock on her suite door clicked, not opening, but sealing shut from the outside. Ada slowly set her phone down on the nightstand, her gaze drifting to her sleeping son. The realization hit her with the cold finality of an executioner's blade. She hadn't just walked into his hotel, she had walked into his trap. Running was no longer an option. The walls of the Kang Grand Hotel were closing in. Han Hyunju sat at her dressing table, slowly unpinning the heavy jade ornaments from her hair. She was not a woman who relied on loud emotion. 12 years of marriage to Kang Jin-Ho had taught her that survival required observing what others missed. She had seen her husband go completely rigid at those glass doors. She had seen the boy's face. She didn't need a DNA report to read the timeline written in Jin-Ho's eyes. Private phone vibrated against the marble vanity, the unmonitored line. "Speak," she said calmly.
The chairman's security team is moving, ma'am, her internal asset reported. Jin-Ho has ordered a total tracking protocol on the British consultant Ada Okafor. He's preparing to lock down her itinerary.
Hyunju looked at her reflection in the mirror, her expression perfectly composed, entirely neutral. She knew how Jin-Ho operated through cold implication and narrowing an opponent's choices. If he intervened first, it would turn into a strategic war, but she had a daughter to protect, and she preferred a conversation based on truth. "Intervene before his security details intercept her," Hyunju commanded softly. "If the chairman finds out we bypassed his protocol." "He won't," Hyunju interrupted, her voice smooth but absolute. "Find out her exact room number. I am going to speak to Ada Okafor myself, face to face, before my husband turns this hotel into a battlefield." The hotel bar was empty at 1 am except for a bartender who understood his job, included not hearing certain conversations. Ada arrived first. Jin-Ho arrived 30 seconds later, precisely late enough to establish that he had chosen to come, not rushed to come. She noticed this. They sat across from each other, neither spoke for a moment. "You look well," he said finally. His English was still unhurried, precise. "You look exactly the same," she said. It wasn't a compliment, a pause. "Long are you in Seoul?" "I was leaving tomorrow morning." He noted the tense. His eyes moved over her face with the same quiet attention she remembered, the kind that made you feel fully seen and fully examined at the same time. "Why did you leave?" he asked. 7 years ago. You know why. I know what I assumed. I want to know what was true." Ada looked at her hands, then back at him. "I knew what you were," she said. "I knew what your world does to people who get close to it. Yet here you are in my hotel. Believe me," she said quietly, "I'm aware of the irony. A beat. How old is he?" She didn't answer immediately. The bartender polished a glass at the far end of the counter. 6, she said. Jin-Ho was very still. "Rights are a different conversation." He leaned forward slowly, not aggressively. The way a man leans forward when he has decided to stop being careful with his words. "I saw his face," he said. "I am not blind, I am not confused, and I am not the kind of man who asks a question twice when he already knows the answer." Ada said nothing. "You made a decision," Jin-Ho continued, his voice low and even. 7 years ago, without telling me, without giving me a choice. I gave you exactly the choice you would have given me," she said. "None." That landed. He watched it land. His jaw tightened just slightly before his expression settled again. "You don't know what I would have done." "I knew what your brother would have done," Ada said. "I knew what your father had done before him. I knew what world my child would be born into if I stayed." She held his gaze. "So yes, I made a decision, and I would make it again." Silence stretched between them, thick and loaded and full of 7 years that couldn't be spoken in a single night. Jin-Ho sat back. He looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, with something harder to name, something between understanding and grief and the particular coldness of a man who has realized the situation is already far beyond his control. "He doesn't know," he said. "It was not a question. He knows what I've told him, which is," Ada met his eyes, "that his father is someone the world wasn't ready for yet." Jin-Ho was quiet for a long time after that. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its precision.
Don't. You have a complicated history. Rights are a different conversation. Understand one thing, Jin-Ho. He is my son first.
Before he is anything else. Before he is yours.
My son first.
She pushed in her chair. "My son, first." She walked toward the elevator without looking back. Jin-Ho remained at the bar. He didn't move for a long time. The bartender polished the same glass he had been polishing for 20 minutes. Neither of them said a word. She was back in the room by 2 a.m. Kofi was still asleep, one arm over his head, completely peaceful. She sat on the edge of the bed and watched him breathe for a long time. She had carried this alone for 6 years. The weight of it had become so familiar she had stopped noticing it. It was just part of her now, part of how she moved through the world, but tonight the weight had a face. And the face was sitting in a hotel bar 12 floors below her, very still, recalculating everything. She had run to protect Kofi. She believed that with every part of herself. She had looked at what Jin-Ho's world was made of and she had made a decision. Her son would not grow up inside it. She still believed that what she hadn't planned for was this, that the world she ran from had a daughter, that the daughter had her son's face, that 6-year-olds walked toward each other through glass doors without fear because they hadn't learned yet that some truths were dangerous. Kofi stirred. "Mummy, here. Everything okay?" Ada reached over and smoothed his hair back from his forehead. Slowly, the way she had done since he was 3 days old, and everything felt impossible. "Go back to sleep, baby. You're still in your clothes." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Mummy, that tall man at the party," her hand stilled. "He looked at me really funny, like he knew me." She kept her voice even. "Did he?" "Yeah." Kofi yawned, like he was surprised I was real. Ada sat in the dark long after he fell back asleep. She had spent 6 years keeping the truth at a safe distance. She hadn't considered that the truth had legs, that it wore a little tuxedo, and waved at its own father through a glass door. End of episode 1. The collision. You just watched a man discover he has a son. You just watched a woman stop running. You just watched 2 6-year-olds figure out what every adult in that room was too afraid to say out loud. And we are just getting started. Episode 2 is called The Reckoning, and I need you to understand what that word means in this story. Jin-Ho doesn't ask questions twice. Ada doesn't break easily. And someone in that hotel arranged this entire reunion on purpose. Before we go into episode 2, drop one word in the comments that describes how you're feeling right now, because we need to know you're okay. Jin-Ho did not sleep. He sat at his desk on the 30-story building floor and watched Seoul change color through the windows. The city moved from night into morning like it had no memory of what happened in the dark. He had a very good memory. 3 separate intelligence contacts had been activated. His man in London had already pulled Ada's home address, employer records, and lease history. Clean, legitimate. Exactly what you would expect from someone who had worked very hard to look like a person with nothing to hide. Sung-yi entered without knocking. That was the agreement, knock only when someone else was present. He placed a manila folder on the desk. School records. Kofi Daniel Okafor, age 6, private primary school in Islington, London. High academic performance, no medical flags. A pause. No father listed on any official document. Jin-Ho opened the folder, a school photograph. Small boy in a navy uniform. Smiling directly at the camera with no fear at all. Jin-Ho looked at it for a long time. He closed the folder. What else? His passport, issued 3 years ago. Mother listed as sole guardian. Jin-Ho stood and walked to the window. "Keep going," he said quietly. Ada called her mother at 5 am Seoul time. 10 p.m. in Lagos. Her mother picked up on the second ring. That was never a good sign.
Hello, dear. You didn't leave.
Hello, Mums.
I tracked your flight. It didn't board. So you didn't leave.
I was going to.
Ada, why? It is 10 o'clock at night, and I have been sitting in this chair since waiting for your departure notification. Don't tell me what you were going to do. Tell me why you are still in that city.
I could not.
You couldn't, or you chose not to.
He found out about Kofi.
How much does he know about Kofi?
Everything. He figured it out at the gala. And I am very sure it's Sung-yi, his right-hand man, because he saw us at the party.
Ada, you are not in a hotel anymore. You should understand that. You are in his building. In his city. Everything around you. The staff, the cameras, the corridors. All of it answers to him first. You need to take that child and run.
Mum, I can't run again. If I run, he chases. And this time, he has a reason to never stop.
You said he was different 7 years ago. You said he wasn't like his father. Then you showed up on my doorstep at midnight with a suitcase and a secret pregnancy that has kept me awake for 6 years.
Mum, this is different.
How then?
Because Kofi saw him, and he reached out for him. Mum, I can run from Jin-Ho, but I can't run from the blood in my son's veins.
Is Kofi my grandson sleeping?
Yes, and he is very happy today because he thinks he just made a new friend.
That's good of him. I will call you tomorrow. But you need to be careful. Do not let that city swallow the daughter in you I raised.
No, Mum, I won't let such happen. Please take care of yourself. Goodbye.
The silence between Lagos and Seoul carried 6 years of fear that had never fully been spoken out loud. She ran for 6 years to protect her son. She came back for 3 days. Now the most dangerous man in Seoul knows exactly who Kofi is. The question isn't whether Jin-Ho will come for them. The question is, what does he want when he does? Drop your theory below. Does he want to claim Kofi as his heir? And I'm very sure he won't take no for an answer. Or he wants to protect them, but protection from a mafia boss comes with a price. The picture was complete. Sung-yi laid everything across the conference table. Printed pages, photographs, digital records on a tablet. 6 years of Heir Okafor's life arranged in neat columns. Jin-Ho walked the length of the table slowly. She had left Seoul in November. Arrived in London 2 weeks later. She had not taken maternity leave. She had resigned instead, waited 8 months, then rejoined a different firm at a lower position. Deliberately less visible, deliberately harder to find. Conference invitation, Jin-Ho said. Who sent it? Sung-yi cleared his throat. That is where it becomes interesting, sir. The invitation originated from our own Cultural Foundation's hospitality division. Jin-Ho turned slowly. Foundation invited her. Specifically requested by name. Processed by a mid-level coordinator 3 weeks ago. A pause. The coordinator resigned the same week. We cannot locate her. Jin-Ho was completely still. Someone had arranged for Heir to come to Seoul. Someone had placed her inside his hotel on a night that belonged to him. He had spent the last 6 hours believing this was coincidence. It was not coincidence. He moved back to the window and looked at the city below. Someone inside his own operation had moved against him. Find the coordinator, he said. His voice was very quiet. Tonight, Kofi asked about CEO 3 times before 8 a.m. The first time, Heir said she didn't know. The second time, she said they would see. The third time, over breakfast, chin resting in both hands, eyes fixed on her with the focus of a child who had decided he deserved a real answer, she put her fork down. Why do you want to see her so much? Kofi thought about it seriously. Because she looked at me like I was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. Nobody looks at me like that. Heir softened despite herself. I look at you like that every day. Mums don't count, he said with authority. She laughed, short and real, the first one since the night before. She lives here, Heir said carefully. We live in London. We're only here 3 more days. 3 days is enough to be friends. Kofi, you always say connections don't have a time limit. He raised one eyebrow. You literally said that at school to my teacher. Heir stared at him. He stared back, 6 years old and using her own words against her. She didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. She looked out at Seoul's skyline. 3 days. She needed to keep him away from CEO for exactly 3 days. She already knew she was going to fail. She found it under the breakfast tray. Not with the food beneath the tray, pressed flat against the tablecloth. A small cream card, heavy stock, the kind that cost more than it had any right to. She had not ordered room service. Heir set Kofi up with his tablet and headphones before picking it up. 1 line, no name, the garden terrace. Come alone, she turned it over. Blank, she sat with it in her hand for a full minute. This was the part of Jin-Ho's world she had never forgotten. Not the violence, she had never directly witnessed violence. It was this, the silence that moved things, the way he operated through implication. Nothing was ever said plainly. Everything was arranged. Your options narrowed quietly until only one remained. She could ignore it. She could take Kofi and leave right now. She did neither. She put the card in her pocket. She got dressed carefully. But armor was armor, and sometimes it looked like a good coat and steady hands. She kissed Kofi on the forehead. Stay with Auntie Bissy. I'll be back in 1 hour. He didn't look up from his tablet. Okay, mummy. CEO showed her the drawing after breakfast. 2 small figures in crayon. One in a dress with straight black hair. One in a suit with a round face and a bow tie that took up most of his neck. Who is this? Hyunju asked. She already knew, me and my friend from the party. His name is Kofi, he lives in London. Hyunju studied the drawing carefully. His mum came and took him away, CEO continued. She looked scared, I don't know why. Like she wanted to leave but also didn't want to. CEO tilted her head. Can I see him again today? We'll see. You always say that when the answer is no. Hyunju folded the drawing. Can I keep this? I'll draw another one. After CEO left for her morning lesson, Hyunju sat at her dressing table. She had looked at that boy's face across the ballroom last night. She had seen exactly what her husband had seen. She was not a woman who lied to herself. Self-deception was too expensive in a marriage like hers. She knew the shape of this. She had known since the moment Jin-Ho went still at those glass doors. She picked up her private phone. The one Jin-Ho didn't monitor. I need information, she said quietly, about a woman named Heir Okafor, London-based. She's currently in this hotel. A pause. Yes, everything. The message arrived at 9:47 a.m. through his private business channel, the one only 7 people in the world had access to. Lee Min-seok was one of them, which Jin-Ho had always considered a necessary inconvenience of sharing a city with a rival. The message was brief. Heard last night's gala was exceptional. Your hospitality is always world-class. They say your family grows more interesting every year. We should have lunch soon. Jin-Ho read it once, then again. He set his phone face down on the desk and sat completely still for 30 seconds. Min-seok knew not everything, not yet, but enough. He'd had someone at the gala, someone who saw what needed to be seen and reported back before midnight, that changed everything. Until this message, the situation had been personal. Painful and complicated, yes, but contained. A private crisis between two people with history. Min-seok's involvement made Kofi a target. In Jin-ho's world, a powerful man's hidden child was not a secret to be quietly managed. It was leverage, currency. Min-seok would not move immediately. He was patient in the way dangerous men were patient, gathering, waiting, selecting the exact moment when the damage would be greatest. Jin-ho could not allow that moment to arrive. He called Sung-yi. Increase security around the hotel's east wing, he said. Quietly tonight, he did not call Min-seok back. She saw him before she reached her seat. 200 delegates filled the conference hall. 3 weeks ago, she had read every speaker's name carefully before agreeing to come. His name had not been on it, but there he was, standing at the side of the stage while the MC introduced the Seoul Cultural Foundation as the event's headline sponsor. Dark suit, completely at ease, the ease of a man in a space he controls. He found her eyes across the room. He didn't smile, didn't nod. No reaction. He simply looked at her for 3 seconds, then turned his attention back to the stage. Ada sat down slowly. She understood immediately. He had not stumbled into this conference. He had inserted himself into it this morning after last night. He was telling her something without saying a word. The same thing the white card had said. The same thing the unrequested room upgrade had said. There is no part of this city that is not mine. There is nowhere in Seoul you can go that I cannot follow. Ada opened her notepad, wrote nothing in it. For 40 minutes she sat in a room with the most dangerous man she had ever known and kept her face perfectly neutral. She breathed through it. She took notes that meant nothing. She did not look at the stage again. It was the hardest thing she had done all week, and the week had barely started. The break came at 11:30 a.m. Ada walked straight for the water station at the far end of the corridor, away from the groups. Away from Daniel, who was already moving toward her with questions she had no answers for. She heard his footsteps before she turned. Jin-ho stopped at a professional distance. Close enough to talk, far enough to look like two delegates standing near each other by coincidence. You got the card, he said, and chose not to come. Did you notice? I noticed. A pause. You came here instead. I have a job, Jin-ho. I came to Seoul for a conference. He looked at her steadily. Min-seok knows. Ada's hand tightened around her glass. He had someone at the gala, Jin-ho continued. He sent me a message this morning, the kind that means he is already watching. Your world is dangerous, she said, which is exactly what I told you 7 years ago. Means Kofi is not safe. The words landed hard. She looked away, then back. What are you saying? I am saying the situation has changed since last night. His voice stayed low, steady. Whether you want my involvement or not, it may no longer be your choice. Threaten me. I'm not threatening you, he said. I am telling you the truth. There is a difference. Ada held his gaze for a long moment. You told me that 7 years ago too, she said quietly. Right before I decided I couldn't trust either one. She walked back toward the conference hall. He let her go. Kofi found her by accident. Auntie Bissy had brought him to the hotel's indoor garden, a glass-roofed space with real trees and a stone fountain. She sat on a bench with her phone while Kofi explored the path that curved around the water. Here, he turned. CEO stood at the garden entrance in a yellow dress, holding a juice carton, looking at him like he was either very lucky or very lost. Live here, she said. Why are you here? My mum had a meeting. The lady watching me likes gardens. CEO walked over and sat on the fountain's edge like she owned it, which Kofi reflected she technically did. I drew a picture of us, she said. My mum kept it. Why? She looked at it for a long time. Same face my dad made when he saw you. Kofi considered this. In his experience, when adults made the same face about something, it meant there was a big answer nobody had told you yet. I think, he said carefully, it's one of those things they'll explain when they're ready. CEO kicked her feet gently against the fountain. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two children who had known each other for less than 24 hours, already more honest with each other than any adult in the building. Jin-ho sat in his car for 11 minutes. He did not do this. He was not a man who sat in parked cars and examined his feelings. He had built his entire life to prevent exactly this kind of inefficiency, but the image stayed with him, Kofi at the fountain. He had seen it on the hotel's internal security feed, the boy sitting beside CEO, talking with his hands the way children did when explaining something important. Easy with each other. Natural. CEO laughing with her whole face. Jin-ho could not remember the last time he had made his daughter laugh like that. He thought about the school photograph. Navy uniform, 6 years old. Looking directly at the camera with no fear and no apology, Ada's courage, his bone structure. He pressed 2 fingers to his mouth and looked out the car window at nothing. He had arranged every piece of his world with precision. His wife chosen carefully, his daughter's future planned before she could walk, his empire built layer by layer over 2 decades. He had not arranged this. A 6-year-old boy in London who didn't know the name Kang, who went to school in Islington with no father on his documents, who waved at strangers through glass doors without any idea what that wave would cost everyone standing on either side. Jin-Ho's chest felt strange. He didn't have a word for the feeling. He didn't look for one. Drive, he told the driver. Ada opened the flights app at 9 p.m. It had become a habit, checking departures, running the numbers, keeping the exit visible in her mind even when she wasn't planning to use it. 6 years of knowing the option existed had kept her sane. She stared at the screen. 6:15 a.m. London Heathrow, 2 seats. She closed the app. She sat in the quiet hotel room and listened to Kofi breathing from the next bed. Slow and even, completely trusting. Jin-Ho's words had stayed with her all afternoon. It may no longer be your choice. She hated that he was right. She hated that the world she had run from had reached across 7 years and placed itself in front of her son's face, curious and gentle and entirely unaware of what it meant. Min-seok was watching. Someone had deliberately arranged her conference invitation. She was not here by accident, which meant running would only solve part of the problem. The damage was already done. The only thing leaving would accomplish now was abandoning Kofi in a city where the people who wanted to use him already knew exactly where to look. She put her phone down. She looked at her son sleeping. She had spent 6 years choosing safety above everything else. She had been very good at it. Tonight, safety looked completely different. Tonight, it looked like staying in a city that wanted to swallow her. Like trusting the most dangerous man she knew with the most important truth she had. It looked like war. Episode 2 is done. And nothing, not one thing, is the same anymore. Min-seok made his move. Hyunju stopped watching and started acting. Kofi heard a name he was never supposed to hear. And Ada stopped checking flights. She chose to stay. In a city that belongs to the most dangerous man she's ever known. In a hotel where every corridor, every camera, every door answers to him first. She stayed anyway, because some fights you run from, and some fights, the ones that carry your child's name, you stand still and let come to you. Before episode 3 starts, we need your thoughts. Hyunju sent that message. You, me, and Ada Okafor together. I am not asking. What do you think happens when those 2 women are finally in the same room? A. Hyunju comes to destroy Ada completely. B. She comes to make a deal woman to woman. C. She knows something about Jin-Ho that even Ada doesn't know yet. Drop your answer. Tell us your theory, because episode 3 is called The Truth Stands. And before this episode ends, every secret in this story will have a face. Every choice will have a consequence. And one 6-year-old boy in a hotel garden is going to say something that will stay with you long after this video ends. This is the finale. Candle, don't look away now. Episode 3 begins right now. The journalist's name was Park Hae-won, 29 years old. Known for pieces that ended careers quietly and completely, she never raised her voice. She simply published. Sung-yi placed a printout on Jin-Ho's desk at 7 a.m., a grainy photograph taken from a distance but clear enough. Kofi and CEO at the garden fountain. Side by side, the resemblance visible even in poor lighting. The attached message read, running a story on the Kang family's latest edition. Seeking comment by 6 p.m., Jin-Ho looked at the photograph for exactly 4 seconds, then he looked at Sung-yi, who sent it to her. We traced the source to a private server registered in Busan. Min-seok's operation. Jin-Ho stood. He walked to the window. Below him, Seoul was already moving. Morning traffic, delivery trucks, ordinary people with ordinary problems. He's been holding this for how long? At least a year, sir. He knew about the child before the gala. The conference was the trigger he chose. Jin-Ho was quiet for a long moment. He had built his empire on staying 3 steps ahead of every threat to it. Min-seok had moved without him seeing. That alone told him everything he needed to know about how seriously to take the next 12 hours. "Buy me time with the journalist," he said. 6 hours. Then I won't need more time. Daniel told her at breakfast. He sat across from her with his laptop open and his coffee going cold, and he turned the screen toward her without saying anything first. A journalist's inquiry. Sent to 4 investment firms that attended the gala. Asking about an unidentified woman and child seen with the Kang family. Requesting identification by end of day. Ada read it twice, then she put her fork down. Someone sent this to our firm, to 4 firms, ours included. Daniel kept his voice low. Ada, what is going on? And I need you to actually tell me this time. She looked at him. Daniel was good, loyal. He had covered for her twice in 3 days without knowing why. He deserved something honest. Child in that photograph, she said carefully, is Kofi. I figured. Ada, and the girl beside him is the Kang daughter. Daniel went quiet. They look identical, he said finally. Yes, how? Ada picked up her coffee, set it down again. 7 years ago, she said. Before I understood what he was, before I knew what any of it meant. She looked at the table. I made a decision I believed was right. Now someone is using it. Seok, she looked up quickly. Daniel's expression was careful. So you know the name. I know enough, she said. I need 1 hour. She stood before he could answer. Sungwoo arrived without being invited. That was always how it went. He appeared where the problem was. The way control the room before anyone else decides to. He came into the private suite and sat without being offered a seat. Tell me it isn't true, he said. Jin-Ho poured 2 glasses of water and set one in front of him. It's true, he said. Sungwoo was 53 seconds silent. Jin-Ho counted. Journalist. The child, his voice stayed flat. How old? 6. Another silence, shorter. You know what has to happen, Sung-woo said. I know what you think has to happen. Jin-Ho, his brother, leaned forward. This is the family name, everything father built. One child born outside this marriage does not get to walk in here and… He is 6 years old, Jin-Ho said, quiet, completely controlled. He did not walk anywhere. He was brought here by his mother for a conference he knew nothing about. He sat at a fountain and made friends with his sister. The last word landed hard. Sung-woo stared at him. His sister, he repeated. Yes, Jin-Ho said. That is what she is. He picked up his glass. We are not father, he said. I have spent long enough pretending otherwise. Ada knocked on his office door at 10 am and opened it before he answered. Jin-Ho was standing at the window. He turned but didn't speak first. He had learned long ago that the person who spoke first in a tense room gave something away. Ada gave nothing away. Min Seok arranged my invitation, she said. Yes. You found out this morning. You didn't tell me. I was managing it. That, she said, is exactly the problem. She walked further into the room. I am not a situation, Jin-Ho. I am the mother of your child. And I have spent 3 days watching you move pieces around me like I'm part of your board. He didn't look away. What would you have had me do? Tell me the truth. Immediately, the way I would have told you. Something shifted in his expression. Small, she caught it. Min Seok has had a photograph for over a year, he said. He waited for the right moment. He chose this week deliberately. Ada absorbed this. A journalist has it now, he continued. She wants a comment by 6 p.m. What are you going to say? Jin-Ho looked at her for a long moment. That depends entirely, he said carefully, on what you are willing to agree to. Ada folded her arms. Talk, she said. Hyunju sent the message at 10:47 a.m. She wrote it 3 times before she was satisfied. Not because she was uncertain, she had been certain since the night of the gala. She rewrote it because words sent could not be taken back, and 12 years inside this marriage had taught her to be careful about what she committed to in writing. The final version read, Jin-Ho, we need to speak. You, me, and Ada Okafor together. This afternoon. I think you know I am not asking. She sent it to his private number. Then she sat at her dressing table and looked at herself in the mirror. She was not angry. She had moved through the anger in the small hours of the first night, lying awake, doing the calculations a woman in her position always did alone in the dark. What she felt now was something cleaner, clarity. She had 2 choices. She could fight this, her family's lawyers, her considerable resources, every tool available to a woman who had not been passive a single day of her adult life. Or she could do what her mother had never been brave enough to do in the same situation, choose herself, on her own terms. With her dignity completely intact, she picked up CEO's drawing from the dressing table, 2 crayon figures side by side. She looked at it for a long time, then she stood and went to find her daughter. Kofi wasn't trying to listen. He was looking for his trainer under the hotel sofa when Auntie Bissy took a phone call in the next room. She always spoke louder on the phone than she meant to. She said it was because Lagos had taught her that distance required volume. He wasn't listening, but he heard his name, then he heard another name, said twice, then a third time in the tone Auntie Bissy used for things that were serious. He sat on the floor with one trainer in his hand. He heard the Kang family, he heard his father. He heard Auntie Bissy say very quietly, Lord have mercy, then she ended the call and went still. Kofi sat for a moment. His father, his mum had told him his father was someone the world wasn't ready for yet. She said it in the tone she used when an answer was true but complicated. He had accepted it the way children accepted things, completely and temporarily, knowing the real answer would come when it came. He put his trainer on slowly. He thought about the tall man at the gala, the one who had looked at him like he was surprised he was real. Kang, he turned the word over in his mind like a new coin, feeling the weight of it, deciding whether it fit. He wasn't sure yet. Sung-woo found him in the corridor outside Ada's floor. Going to her, his brother said, Yes, Jin-Ho. Sung-woo stepped in front of him. Father dealt with situations like this 3 times. Do you know what happened to those children? I know exactly what happened, Jin-Ho said. I was 12 when I figured it out. I never asked him because I already knew what he would say. Sung-woo was quiet. He would say it was necessary, Jin-Ho continued. He would say the family name required it. He would say some things cost too much. He looked at his brother. And you are standing in this corridor saying the exact same things. I am protecting what we built. You are protecting his fear. Jin-Ho's voice stayed level. Father was afraid of what people would think. He built everything on that fear. He called it honor. It was not honor. It was shame wearing a good suit. Sung-woo stared at him. That boy downstairs did nothing wrong, Jin-Ho said. His mother did nothing wrong. The only person in this situation who owes an accounting is me, and I am going to give one. He stepped around his brother. Don't come to me with father's logic again. We buried him 3 years ago. He paused. What he taught us stay in the ground with him. He walked down the corridor without looking back. Ada opened the door and Hyunju was standing there alone, no assistant, no security. A woman in pale grey with her hands folded and an expression impossible to read quickly. May I come in? Ada stepped back. Hyunju entered, looked around the room briefly the way careful people did, and sat by the window. Ada sat across from her, neither spoke for a moment. Here to fight you, Hyunju said. I wasn't preparing to fight you, Ada said. Something shifted in Hyunju's face, almost a smile. What happened between you and my husband is not something I blame you for. I knew what he was before I married him. Women in my position make choices with the information available. Ada listened without interrupting. Have a daughter, Hyunju continued. She drew a picture of herself and your son the morning after the gala. She was happy in a way I haven't seen in a long time. She looked up. I'm not your enemy. I'm a woman who has been living inside a very expensive life for 12 years, and I am tired. Was quiet for a moment. What do you want? She asked. The same thing you want, Hyunju said. For our children to be all right. For yourself. Hyunju looked out at Seoul's skyline. Tell you, she said quietly, when I work that out. Bissy was making tea when Kofi came and sat at the small table across from her. She looked at him the way she always did when she knew something was coming, full attention, hands still, face completely open. Ask, she said. Is my dad Korean? Auntie Bissy set the kettle down slowly. What made you ask that? I heard you on the phone. You said the Kang family and his father. He looked at her steadily. I'm not stupid, Auntie Bissy. I know you're not stupid. You are the least stupid person I have ever met, and you are 6 years old, which is honestly worrying. He didn't smile. He was waiting. Auntie Bissy pulled her chair closer. She looked at him the way adults looked at children when deciding how much truth was the right amount. Kofi had always disliked that look. It meant the answer was yes, but the explanation was complicated. Your mum needs to tell you this, Auntie Bissy said carefully. Does she know I heard? No. Will she tell me on her own? Auntie Bissy was quiet for a moment too long. Eventually, she said. Kofi nodded. He looked out the window at Seoul, enormous and full of things he didn't understand yet. CVO's last name is Kang, he said quietly. She told me herself. Bissy closed her eyes for just a moment. I know, baby, she said softly. I know. He sat alone in the conference room for 11 minutes, no phone, no Sungyi, no files. He had spent 20 years making decisions with data, intelligence reports, financial projections, risk assessments laid flat in front of him. He had never made a major decision without information. This one he already had everything he needed for. Min Seok had a photograph. A journalist had a deadline. By 6 p.m., if Jin-Ho said nothing, someone else would tell his story, frame it the way it suited them. Decide what the world believed about Kofi before the boy was old enough to understand what had been said about him. Jin-Ho would not allow that. He thought about his brother's words. He thought about Ada. I am not a situation to be managed. He thought about the school photograph. Navy uniform. Smiling at the camera with no apology at all. He thought about the fountain, Kofi and CEO side by side, talking easily, already trusting each other with the speed only children managed. He picked up his phone. He called his head of communications. I need a press statement prepared, he said, and the foundation's program director on the phone within the hour. What is the statement regarding, sir? Jin-Ho looked at the city outside. Future, he said. He meant it in every possible way. Jin-Ho came to her room at 2 p.m. He stood in the doorway and gave her the plan in 4 clean sentences. A press statement. The Kang Cultural Foundation expanding internationally. Ada named as London director. Focus, Afro-Korean cultural exchange. Statement going out at 5 p.m., 1 hour before the journalist's deadline. Ada listened to all of it, then she said, no. Jin-Ho waited. Like that, she said. You don't get to rebrand this as a business decision. You don't put my name on a program and call it resolved. If you do this, you do it honestly. You name Kofi, not as a footnote, not implied. You say your son exists. That his mother raised him with everything she had under impossible circumstances, and that you take full responsibility for the years you were absent, not because you didn't know, but because she had no safe choice. That is an extraordinary thing to say publicly. Ada said, it is. Silence stretched long. Kofi, Jin-Ho asked, what do you want for him? He stays in London. His school, his life, his routines. You earn his trust slowly, on his terms, not yours. You do not descend on his world like an empire. She paused. You knock on the door like a person. Jin-Ho looked at her for a long moment. Those are your conditions, he said. The room was quiet for a long time after Ada finished speaking. Jin-Ho had delivered the plan standing the way he always delivered plans. Standing was control. He had sat down after her second sentence. Now he looked at her and thought about the 6 years in between. The gap he had not known existed. The weight she had carried that he had never had to touch once. Every condition, he said. I accept them. Ada watched him carefully. She was looking for the place where he would agree with his mouth and keep something back with his eyes. She had watched powerful men do this her entire career. She didn't find it. Why? She asked. Because you're right, he said. All of it. He looked at his hands briefly, then back at her. I cannot give him 6 years back. I cannot give you back what that cost. What I can do is not make it worse from this point forward. He paused. Kofi deserves a door he can choose to walk through or not. That is what I am going to build. Ada looked at him for a long time. She did not feel relief. It was too soon for that. What she felt was something smaller and more careful, the first small movement of something that might slowly become trust. It was not much, but it was real. All right, she said. The statement went out at 4:58 p.m., not a press conference. Jin-Ho had decided against a room full of cameras and questions he couldn't fully control. A written statement, published across the Foundation's official channels and submitted directly to 6 major news organizations simultaneously. He wrote it himself. He had not done that since the company's founding statement 15 years ago. It said that Kang Jin-Ho acknowledged the existence of his son, that Ada had raised Kofi with extraordinary dedication under circumstances that reflected her character completely, that Jin-Ho took full responsibility for the years he had not been present, not because he had chosen absence, but because the child's mother had made the only decision available to her at the time, and she had been right to make it. It ended with the Foundation announcement, the Afro-Korean Cultural Exchange Program, Ada as London director. He read it once after sending, then he put his phone down. Sung-yi appeared. It's moving, every major outlet has it. Seok, his people called 20 minutes ago, he's not commenting. Jin-Ho nodded slowly. He walked to the window. Somewhere below him in this building was a 6-year-old boy who would wake up tomorrow in a different world than the one he had gone to sleep in. Jin-Ho hoped he had built it carefully enough. Min Seok read the statement 3 times. He sat in the back of his car outside his Gangnam office building with his phone in both hands and his assistant standing on the pavement pretending not to watch him through the window. He had spent 14 months building toward this, the photograph, the conference invitation placed with surgical precision, the journalist. Every piece positioned to force Jin-Ho into an impossible corner, deny the child and look monstrous, acknowledge the child and fracture the family name publicly. Either direction, the Kang Empire would crack at its most visible point. He had not built a contingency for a third option. He had not considered Jin-Ho writing the statement himself, naming the child first, taking the blame completely and reframing the entire situation as a Foundation initiative, published 1 hour before the journalist's deadline on his own terms in his own words. The story Min Seok had constructed had nowhere to go now. He put his phone down. Outside the window, Seoul continued, enormous and indifferent, completely unaware of what had just happened in the back of a black car. He would find another angle. He always found another angle. But today he had been outmaneuvered by a man who chose honesty over strategy. He had not once considered that possibility. Office, he said to the driver. She read the statement at 5:04 p.m. Then she closed her phone and sat looking at the view from this window, the same view she had looked at for 12 years. She had known since the morning after the gala that her marriage was over. Not because of Ada, not because of Kofi. Because of what she had seen on Jin-Ho's face at those glass doors, something 12 years of watching him closely had never shown her before. Something that told her without a single word that this child had reached him in a way she never had and never would. She did not hate him for it. She had stopped loving Jin-Ho long before tonight. What they had built together was real, a daughter, a life, a shared understanding of how the world worked, that did not disappear. It simply changed shape. She called her private lawyer at 5:10 p.m. The conversation was short. She already knew what she wanted: the Seoul apartment, primary care of CEO's schooling, a foundation grant in her name for women's leadership. After the call, she went to find her daughter. CEO was drawing at the desk. 4 figures this time, 2 adults, 2 children. Hyunju sat beside her. That's a good picture, she said softly. CEO smiled without looking up. I know, she said. Jin-Ho knocked on the door at 6 p.m. Ada opened it, looked at him for a moment, then stepped back without a word. Kofi was on the bed with his tablet. He looked up when Jin-Ho entered, and his expression did the thing Jin-Ho was learning it did, went completely still and completely alert at the same time. Taking everything in, deciding, Ada said, Kofi, this is someone I want you to meet. I know who he is, Kofi said. Ada blinked. The room went very quiet. Jin-Ho crossed to the chair by the window and sat down slowly at the boy's eye level. You know who I am, Jin-Ho said. My dad, Kofi said. The way children stated things they had already processed alone. Yes, you didn't know about me. No, I didn't, Kofi considered this. Mum protected me. Did, Jin-Ho said. Very well, a long pause. Seo-yo is my sister, Kofi said. Yes, Kofi looked at the window, then back. What's the Korean word for hello? Jin-Ho was very still. Annyeong, he said quietly. Kofi tried it slowly, getting the shape right. Annyeong, Jin-Ho said back. His chest tightened in a way that had no name and needed none. Ada and Jin-Ho sat in the hotel corridor after Kofi fell asleep, not in a bar this time, not at a table with formality between them, just 2 chairs outside a closed door like parents at the end of a very long day. He handled that better than either of us, Ada said. Ada looked at the wall opposite. I read the statement. I know, you said everything I asked. I said what was true, he said. The asking made it easier. The truth was already there. Ada was quiet. This doesn't fix 6 years, she said. I know that. He'll have harder questions as he gets older. Answer them. You don't get to disappear when it becomes difficult. Jin-Ho looked at her directly. I understand. I mean it. I know you mean it. That is why I'm sitting here instead of managing this from a safe distance. He paused. I let you stay close 7 years ago knowing what my world was. That was mine to own. Ada looked at the corridor floor. It was both of ours, she said finally. I knew what you were. You still left. I'd leave again, she said. I know, he said quietly. I have always known that. They sat in the silence of two people who understood each other completely and were starting carefully from the beginning. The garden was quieter in the late afternoon. The fountain still ran. The glass roof turned the light gold and warm. Outside, Seoul continued, enormous and loud and completely uninterested in what happened inside. In here it was slow and smelled like real soil. Kofi sat on the fountain's edge. Seo appeared at the entrance in her yellow dress, saw him and walked over without any surprise. As if she had known he would be here. As if finding each other in this hotel was simply what they did now. She sat beside him without being invited. Above them on the terrace, barely visible through the glass, two adults stood at a distance watching. Not together, just both there. Kofi didn't look up at them. My dad says you're my sister, he said. Seo kicked her feet gently against the fountain. My mum said the same thing. That's strange for you. She thought about it properly. Never had a sister, he said. Never had a brother. Be a good one, he said with complete confidence. I don't know that for certain yet, but I think I will be. Seo considered this seriously. Then she smiled, wide and completely real. Do you think they'll let us be family? She asked. Kofi looked at the water moving. He thought about it the way he thought about everything, slowly, completely, without rushing to the answer. I think, he said, we already are. Kofi came into this world as a secret, hidden across 6,000 miles, protected by mother who chose his safety over everything else she wanted for herself. He left this story as something no one could take back, a truth spoken out loud, in a man's own words, on his own terms. Before anyone else could weaponize it, 3 episodes, 2 worlds, one child who walked through a glass door and changed every life on the other side of it. He didn't know what he was doing, he just waved. What hit you hardest? The bar scene at 1 a.m. The moment Jin-Ho sat at Kofi's eye level and earned nothing yet. The 2 women in that hotel room choosing not to be enemies, or the garden, and everything Kofi said at that fountain. Tell us in the comments.